The world was still dark and quiet. A single street lamp cast a soft yellow glow onto the pavement. Here, curled into a small, tight ball, a puppy slept. His fur was the color of dust and fallen leaves, a patchwork of browns and grays. His small body rose and fell with each steady breath, a tiny island of life in the silent street. He was a creature of the edges, living in the spaces between the waking world and the sleeping one. This small patch of pavement, just outside the bakery door, had become his safe place, his chosen territory in a world that was often large and loud. As the first hint of light touched the horizon, a new element entered the air. It was a warm, sweet smell, the smell of baking bread. As the bakery door opened, the scent of bread and sugar flooded the street. The baker, a man named Elias, stepped out to sweep the pavement. He was a quiet man, with flour dusted on his apron and kindness in his eyes. He saw the puppy, now awake, sitting a few feet away. The little animal did not run. He simply watched, his head tilted, his dark eyes curious. He was a small and unassuming creature, yet there was a stillness about him, a sense of purpose. He was not begging for food. He was simply present, a small, furry fixture on the edge of the bakery's world. Each morning, the routine was the same. The puppy would arrive just before the sun, settling into his spot near the door. He watched as the first customers came and went. He observed the children who pointed at the cakes in the window. He saw the hurried office workers grabbing a coffee, a croissant. He never barked. He never approached anyone. He was simply a silent observer, a small, self-appointed guardian of the threshold. His presence was so quiet, so unassuming, that many people did not even notice him. But he noticed everyone, his gaze following their movements with a patient, steady focus. He was a very small guard for such an important place. His body was thin, his ears a little too big for his head. Yet he took his role seriously. Elias the baker watched the little dog from his window. He had seen many stray animals over the years, creatures that came and went with the seasons. But this one was different. There was a persistence in the small puppy, a quiet loyalty that intrigued the baker. Elias was not a man of many words. His hands, however, spoke a language of their own. They kneaded dough with expert care. They shaped loaves with gentle precision. And now, they began to perform small acts of kindness for the creature waiting outside his door. It started simply. At the end of his morning shift, Elias would gather the broken bits of pastry, crumbs from the bread slicer. Instead of sweeping them into the bin, he would step outside. He would not approach the puppy directly. He respected the animal's shy nature. Instead, he would leave the small pile of scraps on the pavement a few feet from where the puppy sat. Then he would go back inside, busying himself with cleaning, always watching from the corner of his eye to see the puppy tentatively approach and eat the offering. These were small gestures, easily missed. A crust of a sourdough loaf, a few buttery flakes from a croissant, a slightly burnt edge of a sweet bun. To anyone else, they were just leftovers. But to the puppy, they were a feast. Days turned into weeks, and the seasons began to shift. The vibrant green of summer leaves slowly faded to gold and amber. The puppy grew, though not by much. His coat became a little thicker, his frame a little less bony. The bakery and its baker were the two fixed points in his life. The routine they shared was as dependable as the rising sun. The puppy would arrive at dawn. Elias would open the shop, and the smell of fresh bread would greet him. The small guardian would take his post, and the baker would begin his work. Their bond was built on these small, repeated moments. Elias began to speak to the puppy, his voice a low, gentle rumble through the glass of the window. "Good morning, little one," he would say, as he arranged the loaves on the shelves. "Busy day today." The puppy would lift his head, his tail giving a slight, hesitant thump against the pavement. He did not understand the words, of course, but he understood the tone. He understood the softness in the man's voice, the kindness that radiated from him, even through a pane of glass. On rainy days, the puppy would huddle under the small awning above the bakery window. He would be damp and shivering, but he would not leave his post. On those days, Elias would leave the scraps closer to the door, in a place where the rain could not reach them. He would watch with a worried frown as the puppy ate quickly, his small body trembling from the cold. The baker would find himself thinking about the little creature long after he had closed the shop and gone home, wondering where he slept, wondering if he was safe. The connection deepened with every shared glance, every small gesture. Elias learned the puppy's habits. He knew the puppy liked to nap in the patch of afternoon sun that warmed the pavement. He knew the puppy was wary of loud noises and sudden movements. And the puppy learned the baker's rhythms. He knew the sound of Elias's footsteps. He knew the specific clank of the flour bin opening. They were two solitary beings, living parallel lives that were now, slowly and gently, beginning to intersect. Their silent friendship was as real and as warm as the bread baking in the oven. The puppy's entire existence was a lesson in the art of waiting. He waited for the sun to rise. He waited for the scent of bread to fill the air. He waited for the baker to appear. He waited for the small offering of crumbs. He waited for the customers to come and go. His patience was immense, a deep and quiet pool. He did not know what he was waiting for, not really. He was simply living in a state of hopeful expectation. He had found a place of relative safety and kindness. His instinct told him to stay, to wait, and to watch. This act of waiting was a language all its own. When he sat with his head high and his ears alert, he was on duty the silent guardian. When he lay with his head on his paws, his eyes half closed, he was at peace, soaking in the warmth and familiar bakery sounds. His tail, a small and expressive flag, communicated his every mood. A slight, tentative wag for the baker, a firm, low position when a stranger got too close, a happy thump, thump, thump on the pavement at the bowl of scraps. Elias, in turn, became fluent in this silent language. He could read the puppy's posture like a book. He could tell if the puppy was tired, or hungry, or anxious. The baker's life was one of routine and repetition, measuring and mixing, waiting for dough to rise. He understood patience. He saw his own quiet nature reflected in this small, waiting animal. The puppy was not demanding. He did not whine or bark for attention. He simply waited, his trust a silent, powerful gift. This shared understanding created a bond stronger than any leash, a connection woven from mutual respect and quiet observation. The puppy trusted the baker to provide comfort and food. The baker trusted the puppy to be a gentle, unobtrusive presence. They were a team, though they had never touched. Their days were a slow, gentle dance of action and reaction, of giving and waiting. It was a simple, peaceful existence. But the world outside their small bubble was beginning to change. The days were growing shorter. The air held a new, sharp chill. Autumn began to surrender to winter. The golden leaves were swept away by a cold, persistent wind. Tree branches stood bare and skeletal against a gray sky. The patch of afternoon sun where the puppy liked to nap grew smaller and offered less and less warmth. Elias watched the puppy through the large front window of the bakery, his heart heavy with a growing unease. The glass that separated them felt thicker now. The distance between his warmth and the puppy's cold grew more pronounced. He saw the puppy shiver. The puppy curled himself into an ever-tighter ball to conserve heat. From inside his warm, fragrant world, Elias observed the puppy's struggle. The wind ruffled the puppy's thin fur. The cold pavement seemed to sap the life from his small body. The customers moved past, bundled in coats. Scarf-wrapped shoppers hurried in and out, barely noticing the trembling creature by the door. But Elias noticed. Every shiver cut him. Every flinch was a small pang in the baker's chest. He started leaving out slightly larger portions of food, hoping the extra energy would help the puppy withstand the cold. He even considered leaving out an old blanket. He worried it would just get wet or be taken. The window was a barrier. It was also a frame. It framed vulnerability. It framed resilience that Elias could no longer ignore. He would be kneading dough, hands dusted with flour, and his gaze would drift to the window. He would see the puppy, a portrait of stoicism against the bleak, cold street. The contrast was stark and painful. The cozy, comforting world Elias had built inside the bakery felt incomplete, even selfish. Outside, a creature he had grown to care for was suffering. The baker's internal conflict grew with each passing day. He was a man who preferred to keep to himself. His life was simple, orderly, and solitary. Bringing an animal into that life, a stray no less, felt like a monumental step. It would mean mess, and noise, and responsibility. It would mean changing the quiet, predictable rhythm of his days. But then he would look through the glass and see those patient, trusting eyes looking back. He would see a small life clinging to hope on his doorstep, and he knew a decision had to be made. The turning point arrived not with a sudden drama, but with the steady, miserable beat of a cold winter rain. It was not a gentle shower. It was a driving, icy downpour that began in the late afternoon and showed no signs of stopping. The sky was a sheet of dark, unforgiving gray. The streetlights came on early, their light reflecting in a million shimmering ripples on the flooded pavement. The wind howled, driving the rain sideways. The small awning over the bakery door offered almost no shelter. Elias was closing up the shop, his heart a tight, worried knot in his chest. He looked for the puppy. The puppy was huddled in the far corner of the doorway, pressed to the brick. He was soaked, completely and utterly drenched. His fur plastered to his skinny frame, he trembled uncontrollably. No longer the proud little guardian, he was a tiny, defeated creature, beaten down by the elements. He looked up as Elias opened the door. For the first time, a small, quiet whimper escaped his throat. It was a sound of pure despair. That tiny, broken sound shattered the baker's hesitation. It cut through his doubts and worries about changing his quiet life. In that moment, nothing mattered but the shivering animal before him. Responsibility turned urgent and concrete. To leave him out in this storm was unthinkable. It was no longer if, but how. The bond that had been built through crumbs, the bond built through quiet glances, it demanded action. It demanded sanctuary. Without a second thought, Elias propped the door open. He went back inside and grabbed a stack of old, clean towels he used for cleaning. He walked back to the doorway and knelt down, his knees immediately soaking through on the wet pavement. He didn't speak. He simply held out a towel. The puppy flinched at first, his instinct for survival warning him against this sudden, close contact. But then he looked into the baker's eyes, and he saw the same quiet kindness he had seen through the window for months. Slowly, tentatively, he took a small step forward. The puppy hesitated for only a moment. He saw the open door, a dark rectangle. He saw the storm outside, biting wind and cold rain. He saw the baker kneeling, soft and patient. Taking a leap of faith, the small, wet creature moved. He walked past the baker. He stepped over the threshold into the bakery. It was the first time he'd ever been inside. Warmth hit him like a heavy, wonderful blanket. The air smelled of yeast. The air smelled of sugar, a scent he'd only known from afar. Elias closed the door, shutting out the storm. The sudden quiet was profound. Elias wrapped the puppy in a dry towel. He began to rub him down, careful and methodical. The puppy trembled but stayed still. He leaned into the baker's touch. Close on Elias's flour-dusted hands, gentle as he dried the fur. The baker felt the puppy's sharp ribs, fragile bones beneath the coat. Elias wrapped him in a warmer towel. He went to the back and returned with a shallow bowl. He filled it with lukewarm milk. He set the bowl on the floor. The puppy approached cautiously. He sniffed the milk. He lapped it, pink tongue moving quickly. He drank the whole bowl, warmth spreading through him. He looked up at Elias, eyes shining with gratitude and exhaustion. Elias sat, leaning against a large bag of flour. The puppy crawled into his lap. He circled once, he circled twice. He collapsed into a deep, trusting sleep. Elias rested his hand on the puppy's back, feeling slow, steady breaths. The bakery, usually empty, now held a new kind of peace. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, a new chapter had begun. That night, Elias did not go straight home. He carried the sleeping puppy, wrapped in a blanket, to his small apartment above the shop. He made a temporary bed out of a cardboard box, old sweaters arranged into the bed, placing it in a warm corner of the kitchen. For the first time, the puppy slept with a roof over his head, protected from the wind and the rain. He did not stir all night, his sleep deep and restorative. Elias, too, slept more soundly than he had in weeks. The quiet presence of the small animal in the next room a source of unexpected comfort. The morning routine changed. It was no longer just about baking bread. Now, it started with a quiet trip downstairs, the puppy trotting happily at Elias's heels. The little guardian no longer sat outside in the cold. He now had a new post, a soft rug just inside the door, watching the customers, dozing in the warmth. He was given a name, Alfie, a proper bowl for food, a bowl for water, meals no longer just scraps, kibble. The occasional bread crust as a special treat. The change in Alfie was remarkable. Regular food, a safe place to sleep. His coat grew thick and glossy. His tail, once hesitant, now almost always wagging. He learned the joy of a gentle pat, the fun of chasing a small, rolled-up ball of paper across the bakery floor. Still a quiet dog, but his silence was now one of contentment, not fear. He greeted the regular customers with a happy sniff, his presence a cheerful, welcome addition to the bakery's atmosphere. He was no longer just a stray, he was the bakery dog. And the baker changed, too. The quiet solitude of his life now punctuated by the soft padding of paws, the happy thump of a tail. He found himself talking more, talking to Alfie, talking to his customers, sharing small stories about the dog's latest antics. A space in his heart he didn't know was empty was now filled. The love he had guarded for so long, reserved and unspoken, now had a place to go. The small stray puppy had guarded a bakery, and in return, the baker had given him a home. They had both found what they were looking for. They had found each other,